Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk post-game show. If you guys are new here and never had the opportunity to catch one of these post-game shows, what we do is we break down the quarters, talk about your Detroit Pistons. They played the Philadelphia 76ers tonight. Obviously, that was a loss. We're going to kind of go over some key points from each individual quarter. After I'm done talking about the game, we open up to questions and comments. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns about your Detroit Pistons, definitely leave them in the live chat as you guys are watching right now. But let's get into this game. So with the first quarter, maybe 5 minutes before the game, we get word from the Bally Sports. I keep calling them Bally, the FanDuel Sports Network. I'm probably going to just keep calling them Bally because they've changed their name like 3 times since Fox Sports sold it. Anyways, I'm rambling. We got news that Cade Cunningham was not going to be playing tonight. I was under the assumption that Cade was going to be playing, and I think a lot of people were under the assumption that Cade Cunningham would be suiting up tonight. Now, I know it's on the second night of a back-to-back, 3 games in 4 days. The Pistons have played the most games out of anyone in the entire NBA. They've had a lot of games. Was not expecting Cade Cunningham to sit this one out. Obviously, it was a coaching decision at the end of the day. This was on JB Bickerstaff. He wanted Cade to rest. He just came back from a sprained joint injury in his tailbone hip area. So I can understand the decision. Here's my only thing with it. If the Pistons knew going into the game that we're going to rest Cade, they should have submitted it on the injury report. I mean, 5 minutes before a game, man, like I'm sure Cade probably could have suited up if he wanted to. He was actively up on the bench, cheering on his guys, coaching his guys up. I think if it was up to Cade, he probably would have played that basketball game. I just don't like the way it was handled with the Detroit Pistons and like how they just said, yeah, he's not playing tonight, like 5 minutes before the game. But something I just didn't like. Maybe I'm overreacting a little bit. Maybe you guys can calm me down a little bit. I just thought the way it was handled was just kind of irresponsible on the Pistons' part. But let's get into this game. We had Andre Drummond get injured, never came back. Hope he's okay. Looks like he rolled his ankle, stepped on someone's ankle really bad. So he got injured like really early in the first, but it really didn't matter. The Sixers bigs were just giving the Pistons problems, especially in the painted area. The Sixers just got what they wanted. But in the first quarter, what I really saw was just the lack of ball movement without Cade Cunningham. You can tell when Cade is off the floor, we're not playing basketball games. This team struggles to move the basketball. This team struggles in the half court offense. Um, and it's something that we've talked about, adding another lead ball handler. Now, I know Marcus Sasser is still trying to learn how to play, backup point guard minutes when Cade isn't playing or when Jaden Ivey is out due to injury or vice versa. But I just don't view Marcus Sasser as a backup point guard. I think he's, better suited as just a guy that, give you some offense off the bench. But he was playing some, backup point guard duties tonight, but the lack of ball movement was very apparent in the first quarter. Some positives. I know I've been negative for the last 5 minutes. Asar's defense on Paul George, he was giving them some problems tonight. Paul George was getting frustrating being guarded so tight by Asar. It was really great to see Asar have a pretty good individual game. I know we still lost this game, but individually, I really liked what I saw of Asar defensively, blocking shots. Hit a 3-pointer, had some turnovers, which I think he'll clean up if he watches more film. Probably still a little bit rusty too. Have to remember the guy hasn't played in several months, still trying to get into game shape, and he's on a minute restriction. They're playing him in 3 to 4 minute spurts, and then he has to go back on the bench. But really liked what I saw out of Asar. But in my personal opinion, you guys, I thought this was the worst first quarter of the season. It's up there with the New York Knicks first quarter. Philly dropped 37 points to our 20. So they had a 17-point lead to end the first quarter. Now, getting into the second quarter, we came out with more energy, and it was because of the bench. If we're being honest, Paul Reed, Sar, they just brought the energy. They got the Pistons back into this game after being down 17 points. Malik Beasley really stepped up for the Pistons in the second quarter. And they got this game within 5 going into halftime. Believe it or not, it was 57-52 going into halftime. And they just came out of halftime extremely flat going into the third quarter. Philly just came out more aggressive. They got what they wanted in the painted area. There was no interior defense, no rim protection whatsoever. This looked like a team that just looks gassed. Now, I'm not giving them an excuse in terms of, bringing no energy. They didn't get to Detroit till 4 a.m. because of a flight delay, but like the fact that JB had to rip out the starters in the first and the third, and the bench was giving you more energy trying to get you back into this game, I think is a problem. But overall, in the third, the starters just came out with no energy. And to end the third, it was 89-69 Detroit. In the fourth quarter, I really just didn't write anything. Like the game was over, in my opinion, by the end of the third quarter. Um, the lead was just way too big. I think they were just gassed, in my personal opinion. They do get a couple of days rest going into next week, but the Pistons do lose this game 111-96. Um, it's weird, man, because we talked yesterday of like how locked in they were defensively and how that was the best basketball we've seen out of the Detroit Pistons this season. And obviously, Kate is a big centerpiece of what the Pistons do on a night to night basis. But this team looks completely different when he's not out there. And I understand that. But like, I would have liked to seen a little bit more fight out of our starters. Um, Maybe they're tired. Played the most games in the NBA this season. Their schedule um, has been really tough, but I don't expect them to win every game, but I do expect them to come out a little bit more aggressive in terms of just competing at the end of the day. But this game um, was just a terrible game to watch. They lose 111-96. Want to get to some questions and comments. So let's go into that section of the podcast. So if you guys want to drop any questions or comments with the Detroit Pistons game tonight, or just overall thoughts for your Pistons, we're going to take a short break. And then after we do come back, we'll get into your questions and comments and just kind of wrap this podcast up. So we will be right back, you guys. Okay, you guys, we are back from our quick commercial break. Now, this is the part of the podcast where I open it up for any type of thoughts, opinions, frustration. We'll call it a therapy session for you guys. I get the vent, you guys get the vent. Um, Support group, we'll call it. So we have our first comment of the show from Johnny, and it reads, "Not much to say that hasn't already been said. We need another elite playmaker on the team, especially for the nights Kate is sitting out." Yeah, we've talked about it. Like I had tweeted out during the game that this is a perfect example why the Detroit Pistons need a backup point guard. Now, this isn't a slight at Marcus Sasser because some people think that it's a slight at him. It's not. I don't. I think the Pistons are playing him out of position, asking him to be a point guard. I think he's more of just a bucket getter at the end of the day. In my opinion, you have to try to get a backup point guard. Now, obviously, um, they tried this summer. They tried to get Tyus Jones. They tried to get Patrick Beverly. Don't know what the trade market's going to look like, but two point guards that I would look at are Dennis Schroeder from the Brooklyn Nets and Malcolm Brogdon. I think those are two guards that are obtainable. I think Brogdon's a little bit easier to probably get just because of the contract, because he makes a little bit more money. Not to say that Dennis Schroeder isn't obtainable. I think he is, but his contract is really, really cheap. And I don't know if the Nets would just want to offload him for, second round picks. Don't really know what they're doing. Don't know what their long term plans are. Obviously, they're going through a rebuild, but they probably still want something in return for a pretty good guard. But those are two guys that I would keep an eye on if I'm a Piston fan when we talk about getting another, playmaker, a backup point guard, if you will. I feel like if they really wanted Markel Fultz or a Dennis Smith Jr., they probably would have reached out and signed them already. Obviously, Trajan Langdon may be looking at to get somebody that's a little bit more skilled, a little bit more reliable at the end of the day. But I do agree, Johnny. When Cade sits out, when Ivy has been out due to injury, um, this team just doesn't have a backup point guard, and I think that's something that they really need. Um, in my opinion, anyways. Maybe you guys disagree there, but I'm gonna go into the next question, and this does come from Quinn. Shout out to Quinn. And it reads, if Bobby comes back this season, where do you put him as one of our tallest players? Is he a forward stretch five? So I had the opportunity, Quinn, to talk to Bobby's old coach over in Sweden, and they kind of project him as a forward, more of a four. And I think at the end of the day, when you look at Bobby, when he does come back, I think the minutes he may compete with is Simone Fontecchios. Now, Simone has had an up and down year, in my opinion. There are stretches where he's shooting the ball well, but there's stretches tonight where he had one play where he just turned the ball over and it was really bad, and he gave up a basket on the other end. But I know I'm rambling a little bit. I think when I'm looking at Bobby, I'm looking at power forward, looking at kind of a point forward, if you will, because he can pass, he can shoot, he can defend, he's switchable. I would look at a depth chart of Tobias Harris at your power forward. Then you got Simone, and then you got Bobby. But I think Bobby does have a real shot to compete for Simone's minutes if Simone doesn't pick it up, because this was a guy that we traded for last deadline and really produced, but he's really had a hard time just putting good games together from what I've seen. There have been little stretches, little heaters, from quarter to quarter, but like nothing consistently throughout a whole game so far. But when Bobby does come back, I would probably say he's more of a power forward at the end of the day. But thank you for the question, Quinn. I appreciate it, man. I have a question from Tone, and or not a question, but more of a comment from him. He says, it's crazy how one man's absence can be so apparent. Shaking my head, pathetic. It's crazy. Like, some people, like, I was on Instagram, and Instagram is not a place where you want to have basketball discourse all the time or conversations. One of the comments on our final score graphic we put out was, should have drafted Franz Wagner over Cade Cunningham. Like stuff like that. Just like rage bait, like crazy left field takes. Now, Franz Wagner, hell of a player, but I still rather had Cade Cunningham. But to your, comment, Tone, it is crazy how Cade Cunningham is responsible for so much of what the Pistons do and how they're successful. I do think that Jaden Ivey has developed quite a bit but you can tell at the end of the day, this is Cade Cunningham's team. The Pistons will go as far as Cade can take them. And I think more people are going to start appreciating Cade because in the games that he was out with the Grizzlies game and the game tonight, you're seeing like when Cade's not out there, that offense just folds. Like there's no ball movement, no player movement, really stagnant defensively. It looks really bad. I hope he's okay. I don't know if his tailbone is still bothering him. Hope to see him on the in-season tournament game against the Bucks at LCA this Tuesday. But I agree, man. It is really sad to see that he's such a centerpiece to this team. But if he's not playing, they can't compete without him. This kind of shows you like how important he is. Comment from Ryan: the lazy passes kill me. It's most nights that they're their own worst enemy by passing the ball soft and watching the opponents get fast break or transition threes as a result. We've talked about this, Ryan, and I know you're a regular on these post game shows. Like I had mentioned, I want to say probably last month or a couple of weeks ago, my biggest complaint with the way that the Pistons pass the ball is a lot of the passes at times are very nonchalant and there's no attention to detail. Like if you have someone coming back door, it seems like a lot of times they don't recognize the play, or you have someone cutting to the basket. They just if they do try to make a read, the processing of the play has already broken down, and the other team, the opposing team, the Sixers tonight, they were just the more aggressive team. They wanted this game more at the end of the day, and you have to tip your cap to a team that is struggling right now. They're struggling to get wins. A team that I think a lot of people, myself included, thought they were going to be a playoff team this year. They were going to be a team that was going to be up there with Boston and the New Yorks, but they're really struggling. Obviously, it hurts when you don't have Joel Embiid out there, one of your best players, and in my opinion, one of the better centers in the NBA. But it's really tough when you make lazy passes, like you mentioned, Ryan. But I appreciate the comment, man. Really do. What were the Pistons offering Tyus Jones? So there was not a number that I could find, but people I talked to, I believe we talked to Lazarus Jackson on a podcast, and Laz is pretty in the know when it comes to Detroit Pistons stuff. And he said that they offered him a pretty large contract and he turned it down. And obviously, if you kind of like followed Tyus Jones, his camp made it known that, hey, like, thank you for the offer, but I want to start with the Phoenix Suns, and that's what he's been doing for the Suns. He wanted to be a starting point guard. And I doubt Kate Cunningham was going to kind of play second fiddle to Tyus Jones, but it's just a kind of a situation thing with Tyus. Like he wanted to start. He didn't want to back up anybody. And more power to him. Phoenix Suns are a very good Western Conference team. Comment from Quinn: I think Brogdon would be a sizable vet to help Cade. He's a larger guard similar to Cade and low key play similar. I'd go and get him for a backup for mentorship. Yeah, I've been mentioning Malcolm Brogdon for a while. I'm hoping it sticks. I'm hoping some people look at Washington and what they're doing, and they're probably going to offsell on their veterans and try to get draft picks or young players. Um, but he's a guy that I would be very interested in. Obviously, he does have his health concerns. If you kind of look at him as a player in the NBA so far, but to your point, they're very similar. They play a similar style. He's a vet. He's won. Um, and I think he would complement not only Cade Cunningham, but Jaden Ivey as well. Having another, veteran in that locker room. We've seen what veterans have done to this team so far. With Tobias, THJ, Malik. Like it was the right decision to, get vets this offseason that can, impact winning. And obviously, we have 9 wins this season, but hey, it's progress. We didn't really expect this team to go from 14 to 45 wins overnight. But he's a guy that I would really pay attention to. You never really know at the end of the day. And especially with Troy Weaver kind of being an advisor for the Washington Wizards. Maybe he wants some of his former players that he drafted back. You never know. You never really know. I have a comment from Lohi. Why was Cade out last minute? I don't know. Like, it was honestly kind of funny because if you guys watch Pistons pre-games with the FanDuel Sports Network, they usually talk about players like Pistons players. They're talking about Cade and like how he's just been so good, you know, this season. And they had a whole like pre-game show centered around Cade Cunningham. And then, Mickey York gets something in his ear, probably a producer saying, hey, Cade's not playing. And they had to shift their focus. They had to focus on something else. They didn't even know. Like, it was so last minute. I think it was just a coaching decision. And I'm sure the reporters are probably going to ask JB after the game if they haven't already. Definitely go check Twitter for your Detroit Pistons reporters. Hunter Patterson, who we're having on the podcast tomorrow. Amari saying Kofa and others. I'm sure they probably asked JB why K didn't play, but I don't know, man. It was really weird. And it was kind of funny to just kind of see like FanDuel basically have their whole show, like pregame show, centered around Cade. And they're like, yeah, no, he's not playing. Like they didn't even know. And they're, producing these games for the Detroit Pistons. So it was kind of in left field. Another question from Quinn. How do you feel about Lonzo to the Pistons as their backup? He seems to be available if he doesn't go hoop with his brother. I think when you look at the Chicago Bulls, Quinn, they're having a fire sale. Zach LaVine's available. Patrick Williams is available. Nikola Vucevic is available. Lonzo Ball's available. I think Chicago sees this draft. When you talk about Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, this is a very deep draft class. And I think you're going to see a lot of teams that are kind of stuck in the middle just sell and try to get lucky enough to win the lottery this year. I like Lonzo. My issue with Lonzo is health. Like, how healthy can he be? I think he would be a perfect player, though, to your point. A guy that can defend, very familiar with Fred Vincent. He spent time with him in New Orleans, really helps him rework his jump shot. So there is a connection there. I wouldn't rule it out, though. I really wouldn't. If the Pistons want to buy low on Lonzo, don't know what the Bulls want for him, he could be an option if you are the Detroit Pistons. I think they have a lot of options at guards to add to this team. And I hope they do. It'll be really interesting to see. Now, obviously, over the next couple of weeks, these trade rumors are going to heat up. But I would keep an eye on Lonzo, along with Malcolm Brogdon and Dennis Schroeder. You never really know at the end of the day. Comment from Mr. Ray. There is some concerning body language coming from Duran that disappointed me tonight. That layup and that point at Beasley was pretty egregious. I know exactly what you're talking about. I watched that play live. It was just miscommunication, I think, Mr. Ray. I think Duran thought that Malik Beasley was going to try to cut him off, but he never attempted to. And by the time Duran saw it, it was an easy basket. But if you kind of just watch this game, the Sixers got into the paint as much as they wanted. There was just no type of defensive effort around the painted area tonight. Not from Isaiah Stewart, not from Jalen Duran, nobody. And you could say it was fatigue. You could say it's 3 games in 4 nights, but I don't know. The body language, to your point, I think is concerning given how well and how hard they played yesterday against the Indiana Pacers. I didn't like it either. We're going to go back to Bobby Klitman. This comes from Ryan again. Sorry to go back to Bobby, but it would be really great to know his real status. I think he could be a big help to this team, but not warming up, but not by warming the bench. This is the worst calf contusion in history. So there was some news with his calf. So a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I think it was, Cody Davis, one of our Detroit Pistons beat reporters, had asked JB about him. And JB said that he got fluid buildup in his calf from the contusion. So they had to drain the leg. And Bobby put on his Instagram stories that he's getting close to being back. And then you kind of read into it today. The beat reporters asked about Bobby again. And JB's like, the situation for Bobby Klitman is tricky. So I don't know, man. They don't have a timetable. Bobby says he's close to being back. I usually tend to look at players and like how they're reacting. He seems like he's in good spirits. It seems like it was a bruise, and then he got some fluid in his leg that got drained. So I don't know, man. It's a TBD thing with him. I think he will play. I just don't know when. I'd love to give you guys a timetable. If I knew, I'd be up here and tell you. I just don't know. But to your point, Ryan, I think he would be a big help. I mean, he was the talk of summer league. I remember, like, you guys were very high on Bobby Klitman. So was I. But we're gonna have to wait and see what happens with him. Just the type of updates we've been getting are very vague and not giving us a whole lot of detail. I think the most we got was he had some fluid buildup in that calf contusion. So I don't know. Get to maybe one or two more Q&A questions. Then I'm going to wrap up this podcast. Says I'll see you guys tomorrow at 7. We're having Hunter Patterson on the show. He's the brand new Detroit Pistons beat reporter for The Athletic. So we're going to introduce him to the Pistons Talk family. Just be a chill little podcast talking about the Pistons, trade rumors, and all that good stuff. But do one more comment, and I'll let Quinn have the last one. And it's about Asar Thompson. He said, Asar is looking like he might be Kawhi light. Shot 50% from 3. Technical tonight. I think that's a fair comp. Yeah, the shot is definitely reworked. You can tell he has a high release point on it. He's not like kind of shooting it from like his midsection. Fred Vincent has worked a lot with Asar Thompson and with Ron Holland. And I think that's the reason why they brought Fred in, is to help the forwards on this team that aren't known as shooters, kind of get them shooting at least league average. I mean, if you look up Fred Vincent, you look at the players that he worked with in New Orleans, there's a track record there of guys that weren't good shooters coming into the NBA, developing their three-point shot and being at least average, league average, and borderline elite. Really interested to see how Asar does. I thought this was probably his best game of the season. Now, obviously, he is going through a minute restriction right now with the Pistons, and I understand that. Hasn't played basketball for several months, but I was really encouraged to see him, blocking shots, giving Paul George a hard time. I mean, that's the Asar that we all fell in love with last year. I mean, giving some of the league's best isolation scorers just hell, putting them in torture chambers. Like, I still remember him putting Luka Doncic just in an island by himself. Same with SGA and Zach LaVine to an extent. Like, Asar's a really good player. And if he develops a jump shot, maybe you do have like a little baby Kawhi Leonard. You never really know, but really happy to see him back on the court. Quinn, I appreciate you, man. Definitely had a lot of questions and comments with this post-game show. But I'm going to wrap this podcast up, you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Again, we're going to be joined by the brand new Detroit Pistons beat reporter for The Athletic, Hunter Patterson. That'll be live tomorrow on Sunday at 7 p.m. Definitely don't want to miss that. It'll be a really good show. Appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Peace.